Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. We'll be starting in a few seconds, so you could get settled in. It's going to be really insightful, informative, and interactive. So we got one of the best presenters. So by all means, ask questions. And right here, we're here to assist you to address your business needs in terms of finding and winning federal contracts as well. Just housekeeping items. This is a recorded webinar. So if you have to step out, answer a phone call, don't worry. At the end of the presentation, you will be receiving the video file along with today's presentation. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to put them in the Q&A. And throughout the presentation, either myself, Luby, will be in communication in terms of answering the questions for you, or when it's time for Q&A, we'll speak on your behalf as well. And obviously, it's a good opportunity for you to network, get to know each other, what type of industry you're in, what type of contracts you're trying to look for, if it's state, local, federal. Right there, we could continue with the conversation as well. So I want to, okay, if you can't see anything, perhaps it's the video on your side from one of the chats. But like I said, allow me to introduce to you to Steve Arman from Branches, and he'll give you more information about Branches.
Hey everyone, my name is Steve Arman and I'm the director of the micro business program here at Branches. And together with me in today's webinar is our micro mentor from Branches as well, Luby Somlar. And we are here with the representatives from the Navigator, right? Superman, Jesus, right? Guys, I cannot say it enough. Branches is tremendously grateful to the great work that Jesus does in supporting the work that we do, which is designed to help you, our participants. And over Jesus, in the leadership of the Navigator, we have an incredibly supportive, an amazing individual. And he's going to be actually taking us through today's webinar, Brian Van Hook. And guys, again, so tremendously grateful for these two gentlemen, for all that they do in supporting the work of Branches and the Navigator as a whole. So what's going to happen after Brian does his webinar, please stay back for a few minutes. We would like to speak to you guys about what's next, right? This is the last of our webinars for at Branches for this fall training period. I know that the Navigator has another training tomorrow, right, Jesus?
Yes.
Jesus is going to want to tell you guys about that at the end as well. So please stay on. And just to let you all know, for those of you that are new to Branches, and the Navigator, if you wanted to get to know a little more about what we do and how we can help you, we actually have an orientation webinar set up on Thursday night. So we'll put that invitation in the link for those of you that might be interested in attending and getting to know a little bit more about Branches, right? So with those few words, let me pass it back to Jesus. Thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate everyone that's in attendance today.
Thank you, Steve. And now it's with great pleasure to introduce you to Brian Van Hook. He's the regional director of the Florida SBDC at FIU.
Thank you, guys. Can you guys see my screen? Can you guys see?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, cool. And that's tough to follow those introductions. So I'm going to try to live up to the promotion. And I also know this is being recorded. So I just want to thank Luby and Steve and Jesus. And the whole point of the Navigator program is kind of what Steve mentioned about how we have 7 really good organizations that are working well, and we work really well and we're strong individually, but we're working collectively to help you start and grow your business. So I really love the webinar and that we have about 70 people on, because this is really the whole spirit of Navigators, like these groups working together. So we're going to talk today about finding and winning federal contracts. We're not going to talk about just finding them. I want to tell you how to win them. So please stay tuned. And then like Steve said, we'll save some time at the end for some updates. and also some additional questions from you guys in terms of some of the content. So before we start, you guys are asking, who is this guy? Why is this guy talking to me about federal contracts? What does he know? As Steve and Jesus mentioned, I'm the regional director of the Small Business Development Center under FIU's College of Business. And just like Steve and Luby and Jesus, I love my job. I get to get up every day and help you guys to start and grow your business. And we have a really great team of consultants under the SBDC, both on the Navigator side and on the SBDC side. And shout out to Mirtha Roy, who's one of our Navigator consultants that specializes in government contracting. I did see her in the attendees. I'm originally from Louisiana, but I've been here in Miami for about 8 years, almost 10 years going on. And I have 18 years of experience working in Washington, D.C., both working with the federal government and federal agencies, and also working with the Congress as a congressional staffer. And as I mentioned, I worked in the Senate, in the Department of Commerce. And so I'm very familiar with how the federal government buys, how it works with small businesses, and more importantly, and specific to you, how can you get those contracts? So I'm happy to give you that knowledge. And that picture is just me, my C-SPAN moment. So you can see me in the back. Not many people think it's cool to put up a C-SPAN image, but there you go. That was me on TV. And then the Community Navigator program, like Steve mentioned, we're basically here to be your trusted advisor, your advocates, your ambassadors. We're connecting you to resources such as information on government contracting. We're not going to put up like a little compass that's kind of old school. We're going to put up like the GPS and the phone because we're going to help you get to where you need to get. The Community Navigator program was established by Congress in 2021. It's basically using this Community Navigator approach to help small businesses with economic recovery. And you have a lead group, which is a hub, kind of like a quarterback, like SBDC. And then we work with 6 really great community organizations, such as branches that are working to help small businesses, and we're working together. And like I said, it's focused on economic recovery. We're working with businesses, veterans, women, minority-owned businesses, and we're focusing on training and outreach, technical assistance, like we're doing today. And then under the Miami-Dade Business Navigator program, we have 7 total organizations, Ascendus, Branches, Startup FIU Procurement, Prospera, and SBDC. And so we're kind of working as one mini network to help your business, but we're really open to the ecosystem and to the community. So we brought in other groups that we can refer businesses to, that we can do joint trainings with, that we can share information. So it's working really well. And then if you're not in Miami-Dade County, we will not kick you out of the webinar. We will not kick you out of the Navigator program, but our focus is on Miami-Dade County. So we are, like we said, we're trying to build that local, strong network that's going to focus on assisting businesses with consulting, mentoring, and training. And then we would encourage you to go to the Miami Business Navigator website. Jesus can put that in the chat for you. That's where you can sign up to work with Navigator. You can register for trainings like this. You can stay up to date on new information and resources that become available. And the cool part about it is it's just basically one point of entry, but then you can work with 7 organizations and additional organizations, because like we said, we do refer out to other groups in the community. So it's like a one-stop place that you can register to work with all these businesses, with these groups. And then we would encourage you to see us. We have a lot of webinars available, but we're also out in the community, in-person trainings and resource fairs around the county. So be on the lookout for that. So let's get in the presentation, guys, because I want to be sensitive to your time and I want to save a lot of time for questions. So first, like anything in life, you need to do an evaluation. You need to do some research to be successful in government contracting. So not every business is going to be right for government contracting. I think, Luby, you have your hand up? Or are you giving me a high five? I think she put it down.
So sorry.
That's okay. You're encouraging me. You're telling me I'm on the right track. So for government contracting, not every business is going to be right for government contracting. The reason why is because doing business with the government, it can be expensive, and depending on your product or service, there could be strong competition. So I want to cover some of these key questions that you need to do, like a gut check before you dive in with both feet into federal government contracting. So some of the things you need to ask yourself is, what size contract can you handle? I'm not here to ever tell anybody you're not going to get a $2 million NASA contract as your first government contract. The reality is you might not, but it could happen depending on what your product or service is. And the example I would give you is one of the first clients that registered with the Navigator program, actually worked with Mirtha, was somebody that was a US Army veteran, worked in avionics, had worked in the private sector, in the aviation sector, started his own business in November of last year, registered with the Navigator program in January. And he was able to work with Mirtha and get all the relevant certifications. And his two first government contracts were with the Department of Defense. So not a lot of people can say my first contract was with the Defense Logistics Agency and DoD. And then he's been able to work on some additional contracts after that. So that's why I give you kind of like the caution, flag, but I also give you like the green light that you can do it, but you have to be critical about how you do it. You have to be thoughtful. You need to think about how many proposals you can handle, how many employees can you add, how many are you willing to add, how many more products or services can you create and deliver. Some of the other questions is like, what if you win the contract? What if you lose the contract? Is it going to destroy your business? What can you afford to win or lose without derailing your company? And then just like, they say, what's the song? You got to be ready to hold them. You got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. You got to be in that position for your business that you can still walk away before the proposals due, that you're not kind of putting all your chips in on this government contract. It needs to be something that, is going to help your business grow, but it's not like essential to your business. And then you also need to think strategically about when you're winning a contract, how does that build towards the future for your business? How does that work towards your overall strategy for the business? And then the last thing that we're going to hit this in a couple points on the presentation, but you need to find your niche, your target market. When you're talking about that, you need to look at such things as your past experience, your past performance, where are you focusing geographically? A lot of the agencies are in Washington, D.C., but they do have offices all around, including here in Miami. So you can need to focus on specific geographic areas that you can do the work. Socioeconomic status, which gets into some of the certifications and things like that you can get. And then also, who do you know? Do you have some connections? Can you meet folks at outreach fairs, at vendor fairs? So you need to think about government contracting, and government contracts is like don't think of it as like what it's going to get you. Think about what it's going to cost you, because you need to start from that perspective when you're trying to be successful. So now that we talked about evaluation, I gave you guys a lot of questions. Let's talk about how you can build a plan that's a strong plan for government contracting. Like I said, basically, the reality is that most businesses don't get a NASA or a DoD contract out of the gate. The tried and true path for local businesses to kind of work their way up is kind of like anything you would do for business in terms of like climbing a ladder, not skipping steps. Start small, start local, build up that past performance, which is basically getting some contracts and some experience under your belt, taking advantage of teaming or subcontracting, growing your business's capacity, whether that's the financial side, whether that's the HR side, whether that's the operations side, and then working your way up to those larger contracts. And this is kind of like the general path or the plan in terms of kind of like 5 or 6 quick bullets. And then we're going to dive into it in a little bit. So I mentioned past performance a few times. Past performance is information on what a contractor's actions have done under previous contracts and orders. It uses an indicator of what you're going to do in the future. So procurement officials use this as one of the most relevant factors when considering awards for contracts. It's basically kind of like a resume or like your credit history. It's kind of like, what have you done in the past so I can forecast what you're going to do in the future. And that's why it's tough for you to get a federal contract right out the bat, unless you personally have a lot of experience in the private sector, or you have an innovative product or something like that. In terms of subcontracting, that is a common way for local small businesses to get that important past performance, is to work as a subcontractor for a prime. Subcontractors work with the prime contractor to fulfill work under the contract. They don't work directly with the federal government. They don't manage the main contract. They just basically do work under that prime. And this is key because some federal contracts do require that a larger business contract with local small businesses, especially small businesses with particular certifications. So I did include in the presentation, the SBA has a good rundown on subcontracting, on working with primes, things like that. And like Jesus said, he'll send you this presentation after the webinar. And then teaming is where a group of small businesses work together on a joint project. So it allows you to pool resources, abilities, technical knowledge to secure and perform on a government contract. And it basically makes you more competitive when you're in the bidding process, because just like with Navigator, everybody has their own strengths. So it's a way to work together to basically be successful on the contract. And I did include in the presentation a link to the Northern California PTAC website, because they do have a YouTube on teaming and teaming agreements. So they do have some more information that you can look at on your own time about teaming and how to set up agreements, because it's one of those things where you really got to negotiate well and kind of outline what everybody's going to do so that you're going to be successful. So now that we've talked about evaluation, now that we've talked about coming up with a good plan, let's get into how you're going to find those federal contracts that you're going to put a bid on. So the first things first is that you need to register with the system for award management. And so I did include the website. It's kind of like it's Sam for like Uncle Sam. And a lot of businesses right now are having trouble registering for SAM. If you guys want to put in the chat, put in there who's registered on SAM, like who's registered in SAM, who needs to register in SAM. Kind of put that in the chat just so we can see for Luby and for Steve and for Jesus and for Mirtha, because I know a lot of folks are having trouble right now with SAM. That's kind of one of the things that keeps groups like SBDC and PTAC and some of these other groups and businesses, because we're very well knowledgeable about how to navigate some of these registration systems and how to troubleshoot if you have some issues, because there are call centers you can call. There are like different things available on the internet, but a lot of times you need somebody to help you to figure it out. And then what I did do is I did include some key steps that you can register on, how to register on SAM, and it's under the Association for the Procurement Technical Assistance Center website. So on the last link I put on there is kind of like those key steps for registering on SAM. And then once you get registered on SAM, you can basically click on the contracting opportunities and you can search for things that you can like research more, like different opportunities. And then you can also look for opportunities with the General Services Administration. I did put the link up there. The General Services Administration is kind of like the gatekeeper for a lot. They manage a lot of the federal government's real estate and buildings. They also do kind of like purchasing and things like that. So GSA is kind of like a big dog when you're talking about the federal government. It is difficult to get on the GSA schedule and to work with GSA, but it definitely is an opportunity you should look into depending on your product and service. And then we talked about subcontracting opportunities. There is searchable subcontracting opportunities via a bunch of databases on the web. So I did include the SBA website that lists a lot of those subcontracting opportunities, so that you can basically search for those. So that's also in this presentation. So now that we talked about evaluating if your business is ready for government contracting, now that we talked about coming up with the plan, now that we talked about researching the federal agencies and opportunities, let's get into targeting. So the first things first is you need to start your search by basically reviewing opportunities based on your industry. You may have basically the federal agency, what they use is called the NAICS code. It's North American Industry Commodity something, but it's called, the acronym is NAICS. The NAICS code is you're going to have sometimes more than one industry. So you want to basically limit it to a couple that you can basically successfully perform work or sell your product. Don't get scared though. This is going to be a huge number when you search, but you do need to define your market. And then what you want to start doing is you want to start refining your search based on the unique advantages or the niche of your business. I'm assuming everybody here is a small business. You don't have like 500 employees, or you don't have, you know, $20–25 million in revenue. If you do, God bless you. But if you're below that threshold, then you would be considered a small business. Also, small businesses have different socioeconomic statuses. You could be a service-disabled veteran. You could be a woman-owned business. You could be a minority-owned business. So there are specific certifications that you would be eligible for. Some of those are ones like the 8A program that you do have to make an application for it. Some of those are ones that you can just self-certify, where you can basically just fill out some information. The SBA or the agency can check it, and then they can give you that certification. So it's a little easier. You also want to search by your geographic area, where you live or where your business is located. That's usually the best place to start. You don't want to start doing things like 5 states over or in Washington, D.C. It might be better to try to start local if you're just getting into government contracting. We mentioned again about past experience, past performance, if you've got anything that you can build on that you've done in the past. So there is 2 ways that you can look. You can basically look at forecasts, or you can look at past awards, because those are ways that you can get smart on what agencies have spent or what they're projected to spend. Like, I'm a big believer in the forecast, because I love to see, like, being strategic and looking farther out. What are people going to buy in the next year, the next 2 years? So I can really like work on my business, and I can basically make sure that I'm ready when something comes out, and I already know to kind of target that agency. Some other businesses do look at past awards, because they want to see what folks have bought in the past. Like, who's the contract officer, who got the contract, you know, where were they located, those type of things. How much was it? How long was it? But some of the key questions you want to look for is, what is the agency buying? How do they buy it? Do they buy it with a you know, a contract that they put out? Are they able to do it via procurement cards? What are the amounts? Are they huge amounts? Are they small amounts? Is it small amounts of a lot of things? Is it one big bulk order? Are there any set-asides? Do they do a set-aside for veteran-owned small businesses? Do they do a set-aside for women-owned businesses? Do they do a set-aside for 8A businesses? That'll help you to target what type of certifications, because a lot of businesses will actually pay people to help them get certifications. They'll spend all this time and money getting a certification. In some cases, the certification is limited, such as 8A, where you have a limited time to participate in the program. And the agencies they want to go for, they're not looking for those certifications. So what you need to do is you need to reformat your search, and you need to basically look at what agencies you want to do business with, who's buying what you're selling, and what certifications do you need to get to work with those agencies. The other thing I want to mention is, from the federal government, there is a lot more pressure for these federal agencies to hit their small business goals. So you can also look at agencies that are struggling to hit their overall small business goals of working with local small businesses, or particular certifications or different types of businesses. So the key thing you want to look at, though, when you're doing this targeting is, like we said, look for key agencies, look for a procurement contract. So you want to basically find, for that particular contract that you're going after, who's the contracting officer? Is it Brian Van Hook? Oh, wait, this is the federal government. You can find their email address, their phone number. You can find a lot of information. So you can actually find a lot of that on, and it's even better if you can find it when they're currently in the contract and somebody's working on it, but you're interested when it comes up for bid in a year or two, you can actually contact that person and get in touch and find out what information they would need or kind of what's going on, because they're less likely to talk to you when the proposal's out for bid. And then also you can look for requests for proposal webinars or workshops or vendor outreach events. A lot of that information is posted on the agency's websites too. And it's always good to sign up for any newsletters, to sign up for any e-blasts, because those are things where they'll email you about upcoming events or upcoming proposals. I did mention about the agencies. This is actually what was posted on the SBA website. I think it's been updated since I pulled the slide, but this shows you the different agencies and their different goals that they have in terms of working with service disabled veterans, with subcontracted work, with hub zones, things like that. So this is publicly available. It's on the SBA website. And you can see how what each agency's goals are. And then they also do have scorecards in terms of how each agency does. So now that I talked about basically evaluating, planning, researching, targeting, let's say you get your foot in the door. Now you got a fish on the hook. You got somebody that's interested to do business with you, or somebody that you're meeting at an event. Let's talk about how you can network with them and hopefully close a deal. So well, you guys are business owners. You guys are entrepreneurs. The common mantra is prepare. And in government contracts, I'm not going to repeat it, but it's basically prepare times 10. Prepare, prepare. You need to be prepared. If you're going to do a meeting with somebody and you haven't done your homework, you haven't been prepared, you don't have the information they're asking for, it's going to look really bad. And that's going to reflect on you because you're somebody that you want to do business with them. So like I said, whether it's you call it business development, whether you call it networking, whether you call it outreach, making connections, whatever you call it, it's basically you need a hustle. So you need a hustle, and basically you need to get in the right in with the right contacts to get your business the right contracts. So you need to kind of get smart on how to do this networking right. So best practices are identify, like we said, some of those previously awarded contracts that are similar in scope and services to what you provide. Don't talk to an agency representative when they've never bought anything that you're selling, or they're not likely to do it. You want to have done your research and say, well, I saw that you did this a year ago, or you're about to do this, or whatever. It's good if you basically got that in hand. Take proposal and cost estimating classes, or use a software program. Some of these are available at no cost. Some of these are available at minimal cost. But those are some things that you can look at. They're available under different programs at universities, at community colleges. Those programs are out there and they're available. Proposal and cost estimating classes. That's important so that you can basically price what you're working on properly. Also, a lot of businesses that are successful, they develop a contract or an RFP matrix that they can track or they can forecast contracts that are similar in scope to what they're going to bid on. And a lot of times this can be something that can be set up in Excel. You actually might even do a Google search or Firefox or anything else. You might do a search, because I think that there are some of these in there. If you do contract matrix or you search up RFP matrix, some of those templates might be available. You can probably find that from like that AppTech website, or kind of one of the local small business groups that works on contracts, because I know I've seen a couple of those templates floating around. And then whenever you're working on these proposals, just like if you were going to be in a pitch competition, just like if you're going to be in, let's say you're going to be in a cooking competition, you want to know what the judges are going to look for so that you can make it. You want to look for, is it presentation important? Are they looking for you to use certain ingredients? Those type of things. So you don't want to have, if you're making like a cake, you don't want to have the cake look, really bad. You don't want to miss an ingredient and then they deduct your points. The same thing that you would do for going for a proposal. You want to know how are they going to score these proposals so that you can tailor your proposal towards what they're going to look at. And so it's just, you know, you want to understand that before you submit the application. There's also 3 things that you should have ready when you're going to go to a vendor outreach event, whether you're going to go to an RFP workshop, request for proposal workshop, whether you're going to meet with any procurement officials. You need to have a capability statement, which is basically the resume for your business as it relates to government contracting. You need to have a practiced elevator pitch, and you also need to have business cards. In terms of a capability statement or a CAP statement, that's basically the resume for your business. It's a 1-page document that has all of your business competencies. It provides specific information to convince somebody to do business with you. And when you write it well, and when it's been reviewed, it's going to set your business apart from the competition. A CAP statement should have the following points. Like we said, core competencies, any facilities and equipment that you have that sets you apart, your expertise, basic information such as your NACE code that we talked about, your DUNS number, your CAGE code. These are all like government contracting, different like acronyms. Any certifications you have, whether that's a local certification, a federal certification, a state certification. If you have any like customers that you work with as past performance, put that on there. Any big contracts that you worked on, any subcontracting you've done. It needs to be generally 1 page. You can use both sides if you need to, or you can make like a little trifle, like a little brochure. But you want to kind of keep it concise on the basic information you're looking for. And then just like I've done for the other slides, I did include in the presentation some information on how to write a good CAP statement, what you should look for, those type of things. So we're not going to leave you like all alone. We're going to give you the information you need to build on this. And then let's say you're basically stuck in an elevator with a contracting officer, an elected official, a prime contractor. Can you quickly and professionally, can you describe your business, the solutions you're going to give them, and the expertise that you can bring to the table? You don't have to be the best public speaker. So you don't have to be the most charming person, somebody that's going to be on Shark Tank and like win, $2 million right away. But you should be prepared to deliver your elevator pitch. And for the elevator pitch, you're going to cover these points: who you are, what are you, what do you specialize in, what do you do, what you're the best at, and then what do you want? And a lot of times when I worked on Capitol Hill and worked at the federal government, people would talk for 45 minutes about things and they wouldn't get to what they want. And for me, I would be sitting there waiting. What do you want? What's your ask? So you need to don't dance around it. Just like in sales, you need to ask for the sale. So the thing you can do is basically write down a paragraph on each of these points and then cut it down so it's very concise and make it where it's like a 30-second elevator pitch. Make it conversational. Don't sound like a robot. Don't sound weird. And don't be odd in your delivery. Practice it in front of a mirror. Have it memorized where you can do it at a moment's notice. If you're like standing next to somebody and you're like, oh, they work for the agency that I want to work with. And then, like I said previously, federal officials, state officials, local government officials, they don't always sit behind a desk. Folks are out they're more active. They're in the community. They do outreach on contract opportunities and they want to attract new vendors. So the only way you should attend these type of events is, again, like I said, if you're going to do the proper preparation before the event and if you're going to follow up after the event. If I had a lot of meetings where I would meet with somebody, it would be a really great meeting, and then they wouldn't follow up. They wouldn't send me a very detailed email following up saying, we discussed this, you're going to do that, I'm going to do this. Or people would be in the meeting and wouldn't be prepared. So that's usually a red flag for any of these agency officials if you're not prepared and if you don't do the follow-up afterwards. So those are the key things. Be prepared for the event and then follow up after in writing on the something you said that you would do, or kind of like an action item. And then choose the right events, because if you're doing something, you're not doing something else. So you need to focus on what's going to be the best fit for your business. And then, like I said, don't go to an event if you haven't done the research. I did include in here a link from the Georgia PTAC, which has 14 good tips for participating successfully in these type of outreach events. So you guys can look at that on your own time to kind of get smart on that. And then in terms of communication tips, you need to be aware that there are periods of time when a government contracting officer cannot talk to you, where it's basically the cone of silence. So you need to understand sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it isn't. So it is appropriate to communicate with the contracting officer during the pre-solicitation and the post-award periods, but when it's out for bid, they can't talk to you. So you want to be mindful of that. Don't initiate contact with a contracting officer, until after the solicitation is closed or when the proposals are under evaluation. So you need to be mindful of when that is. You also be mindful when things are put out. Sometimes you can put in like a question, but then it won't be directly to you. It will be part of like an overall frequently asked questions document. So there's some things that you need to be aware of, that you won't get guidance just for you. It might go out to everybody else. And like it says in the slide, solicitation documents are going to spell out the proper communications protocol and when you can and cannot reach out to the contracting officer. And then you just need to remember that you're never going to get a second chance to make that first impression. You could be the most charming person in the world. You can have a great business, but if you set a really bad first impression, it's going to hurt your business. And the one thing we would know for you is to be professional. That does include having an email address that's affiliating with your website. That generally for the federal government agencies, that does raise flags up when it's a Yahoo or a Gmail account. So you do want to have like an email address that's affiliated with your company's website. Double and triple check any typos in your emails and your website, because that is kind of like nails on chalkboard moment when there's a lot of things that are misspelled or things that are incorrect. And we would always encourage you to not say that you can do everything. So if somebody's like, we need this, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. These agencies work with like, in some cases, hundreds of businesses a year. And what they want is somebody that can provide a particular solution to the problem or the need that they have. So what you want to do is focus on what your sweet spot is. Don't try to be everything to everybody. And like we said, lead with you and your company's expertise and emphasize your ability to mitigate risk, to perform, and to overcome those obstacles. And I did include way more information than you guys need, because I'm assuming you guys are going to get this webinar and kind of click through some of the presentation and click through some of these links. So I did include like introduction to government contracting webinar, government bidding, writing a government proposal. We do have a roundtable that we did in Spanish with Alpha and Omega Church. That was a good roundtable on government contracting. So I included those links up there. Also included some links to the Florida PTAC website, the Georgia PTAC website, which has a lot of good information, SBA's website in government contracting in English, also included the link in Spanish. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have, and just would encourage you to reach out to us. Go to our website, go to our social media handles, go to our YouTube page, where we have a lot of this information available too. So let me stop sharing and then we can.
No, Brian, you can leave it there. Oh, you could left it there.
Okay.
Also, if I know that some of you have already emailed me, but by all means, I encourage you to email me if you're looking for assistance for SAM registration. So like that, I will be able to collaborate with Luby and with our government contracting consultants, just to continue with the carrying the baton for the SAM registration and also to fulfill your business needs. And then anyone that has any questions for Brian, just email it to me and I'll be able to present it to Brian as well. Yeah. So I'll be his.
And I did see Mirtha was kind of helping us with. I did see Mirtha was responding with some information on like the email.
Yep.
Like where it's the info to have the owner's business email. That's a good tip, Mirtha.
Yep. Yeah.
So don't tell me I answered all your questions in the presentation. You guys have any government contracting questions?
It's because Brian, as you were presenting, I was answering your questions. I was already answering. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because it's like you've seen this presentation before.
I think so.
But guys, just know that you're not alone. At the end of the day, you have the SBDC, you have branches, You have the Navigator groups, you have the PTAC program, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center program. You have a number of other groups that are here locally to help you with government contracting. We can help you and work with you step by step. We can help you to identify those agencies. We can help you to get the certification. We can help you if you're working on the proposal. So definitely you're not alone in that. I know I threw a lot at you, but the good thing is it's not a flash in the pan. We are going to send you this presentation so that you can basically follow up with it and look at some of the links. I did see Marla said she's registered with Miami-Dade County Public Schools and that you should be creative finding contracts. What's the best time to get prepared when you're a new business? That's actually a great question, Marla. So for the agency, I talked about doing your research and doing your homework. You need to understand how everybody buys things. So for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, they have a particular like annual fiscal year. For the federal government, they have a fiscal year. The fiscal year for the federal government runs from October through September. So October through September. It also is contingent on Congress passing their appropriations bill, like their funding bill. So when Congress passes the bill, then they get the money. Sometimes it does delay them to put out some spending because they're waiting for Congress to give them the funds. But understanding the fiscal year for the federal government, there is like a golden time for the federal government. And when I'm going to ask in the chat, when would the golden time be for federal government agencies? When would be probably one of the best times to work with an agency? I'll give you like 2 seconds because I don't. Somebody says beginning of the fiscal year. That actually could be a good time because they're just starting the year off. So I'm not going to discount that. But the best time to work with a federal agency is near the end, as Marlene and some of the other folks said. July, August, September. The agency has money and they have to use it or lose it. They have to spend it by the end of the year. So for a lot of businesses we've seen, they actually have an agency that wants to work with them, but they're not registered in SAM. They have some IRS issue that they need to get cleared up in terms of the registration. So they can't actually get the contract because they haven't done their homework and their preparation. So I would encourage you, and actually I'm from Louisiana. I don't like to use that example all the time because it's not necessarily how the federal government works. But if you guys imagine a Mardi Gras parade, the best place to be in a Mardi Gras parade is at the end of the parade because that's when they start dumping all the beads off the Mardi Gras parade. So I'm not saying that's what the federal government does, but they do have a lot of spending that they do at the end of the fiscal year. Also nowadays it is because they'll get their congressional appropriation and sometimes it is delayed. So then they'll have more spending at the end of the year. But those are the type of things you want to map out. So I would encourage you to definitely register. Jesus put the link up there. And I see...
Brian, I have a question for you.
Okay.
It is how easy or complicated is it for getting funding for a new nonprofit organization that's just a startup?
For a nonprofit?
Yeah.
I think that's something that you can basically that could be handled. Jesus, you or branches can work on that because it does depend on kind of what the nonprofit is doing, what they're looking for the funding for. So there's those type of things, and I know that there is some grants out there for nonprofits. So those are some things I see so David mentioned he has a DUNS and a SAM number from 2 years ago that I used in an application. Should they still be active? Not necessarily, David. Those are things that you need to check. That would be something where you might want to register with Jesus or send Jesus an email. So that way you could basically have somebody double check it, because we've seen a lot of times when the registration lapsed and it needs to be reactivated and things like that.
And Martha says that the SAM profile does expire.
Yeah, so there you go. I'm on target. So so I see that's kind of all the questions that you guys had. I was going to turn it back to Jesus and Steve and Luby, but if you do have any additional questions, please email to Jesus. He will get you the presentation so that you can look at it on your own time. And then for me, basically, just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you. If I can't help you, Mirtha knows way more than I know. So she's kind of the secret weapon. So, definitely feel free to register for Navigator, email Jesus. on that, and then I'll kind of go off camera so that Steve and Jesus and Luby can talk. Just thanks for everybody, and great response.
All right, so then I'll pass it back to Steve to go over with some of the upcoming events.
Sure. Did you want this to be a part of the recording, Jesus?
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, we can stop. But
Okay.
essentially, guys, we're having. We would have put